I'd like to welcome everyone that's joined us from around Australia. We've had schools from all around the country join our Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors webinar, and we're delighted to have you involved. And thank you to all the schools that have sent through wonderful questions for our guests. But what I'd like to do initially is just acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands from which we're meeting today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. Welcome.
Solid.
We're very excited because our guests from Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors include the writer and producer, Vanna Morosini. Vanna, welcome to the webinar. Our next person I want to introduce, you probably don't need any introduction to, it's the amazing Ghenoa Gela, or G, as you probably know, the host of Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors. G, welcome to the webinar.
Hey friends.
It's great to have you involved. And the two stars of the Milk Run episode, Jeff and Harry, have joined us all the way from regional Victoria. Guys, welcome to the webinar. It's great to have you on board. And I want to mention to teachers, before we jump into some of the wonderful questions that have been sent through for the guys, is that we're developing, through Janine Kelly, our curriculum officer here at the ACTF, a teaching toolkit for Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors, which will probably be released in the next few weeks. So for the teachers out there, look out for the Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors teaching toolkit. That'll be on the ACTF website, and if you head to the education section, you'll find that there in the next few weeks. All right, we've had wonderful questions sent in for everyone. I thought we might jump straight in and ask Vanna a question that's come through for you from Peregian Springs State School in Queensland, who I know are online, so a big shout out to Peregian Springs. And it's a question for you, Vanna. Where did the idea for the series come from?
It's a really good question. Hi, everyone. I think basically I wanted to sort of look at telling a story, like engaging everyone with history and telling stories of fantastic kids in the past that kind of weren't often told. And so that's really where the idea first came from. And I started talking to the children's author, Jackie French, who's done a lot of work with history and stories of kids. And we just got excited about all the stories that are around, that are out there. So many kids who've done incredible things that we don't really know about. So that's really where it came from and just kind of grew from there.
And
Thank you.
Thank you. And I imagine, Vanna, that sometimes in history we don't see perhaps the stories of children that much. And clearly this is focusing on Are You Tougher is focusing on the histories through the eyes of children. Why do you think that's important when sometimes in history perhaps we see it through the eyes of adults rather than children?
Well, I think that it's really important to see history through a number of different perspectives, and also sort of give kids an idea of how incredible they are and the things that they can do. And in fact, the Leongatha story, there's another story from Leongatha in the series of Lenny the Legend, which is Lenny Gwyther riding his pony at 9 on his own all the way from Leongatha to Sydney and back, is just an example of the sort of incredible things kids can do. And I think it's really great for children to sort of be reminded of that and also connected with our history in a way that's a lot more personal and a lot more relatable. You know, it's like, what were kids like me doing 100 years ago or 50 years ago? What games did they play? How did they live? What was school like? And those things are really a really strong way to get connected with history, I think. And you realise that kids in the past weren't really that different from us now.
Apart from not having a mobile phone, perhaps.
Yeah, no Google or YouTube.
And for Jeff and for Harry, a question that came through from Loxton Lutheran School in South Australia, which I believe Loxton's up near the Murray River, was, what does it feel like to walk in the shoes of our ancestors? So for both of you, what was it like to sort of be walking the shoes of Conway Ty in retracing what he did delivering the milk?
I thought it was very interesting, the getting a perspective of how his life was and how he went through life. Obviously, he did the milk, and that would have been tough for people of our age who are in school right now and doing that.
And Jeff, what about for you?
Well, for me, so Conway, because I didn't really know much about what kids did back in the past. So I thought they had tons of free time. They didn't have much to do. School was pretty breezy. So to see about Conway and how he got up every morning at 2 a.m. to deliver milk was really, really fascinating for me.
Mm.
And I think at the start of the episode, you were both pretty confident that you were going to be able to at least match what Conway did, whereas perhaps at the end of the episode, once you had to go through the various tasks, you'd perhaps change your thoughts a little bit. So how tough was it for Conway, do you think?
Yeah, it was really, really tough. We probably overestimated how easy it would be, but yeah, he did miles more than us. We went around the block. He did 12 Ks every day, which is really, really intense.
This one's probably for everyone, but I might start with you first, G. In terms of the toughest challenges the kids faced throughout all of the series, what were the things that stood out for you?
Actually, the resilience of all the young people that were involved. Yeah, like you could see that they were really keen at the start, and then when the tasks popped up, you could see them struggle to navigate on how to actually achieve the goals that we kind of set before them. But what was great about that was that they all came through, and they all found the resilience within themselves to push past it. So all of the possibilities were there. We were just presenting them with different pathways, to navigate these hard scenarios, that young people don't do these days, and it's not because and it's purely because of where we are. We have cars. There's nobody's riding any ponies anywhere or camels anywhere. Not like that they did back then anyway. So it was. They all have, every single one of the stories have their own sense of toughness to it, and because you can't weigh up everybody's life. You can't put this life is more competitive than this life or whatever. All of it actually was hard. So all of the young people went through their own sets of challenges to be able to achieve what they needed to achieve, that we were hoping that they would achieve, which they did successfully achieve by the end of the episode that we were shooting. So yeah, all of it was hard, and but all of it was doable, and everyone done it. So winning.
And Vanna, what about for you? The toughest challenges that you saw throughout the series?
I couldn't describe it better than G just did. That was awesome for G. I think she's absolutely right. I think all the kids and all the tasks, had their own challenges, and they were all different. And it's true, we live differently now. So it's not that kids, in some ways, kids are still tough. They still do really tough things. But then putting them into an environment where they had to sort of engage with what kids did in the past in a different way, I think helps them to realise how resilient and tough they actually are. Because I think kids now often don't get the same opportunities to, have the same freedom maybe as well. Even though the tasks were difficult, they also had a lot of opportunity to kind of work them out themselves and give it a go, and then found that they could do it, which was great. So they were all tough, and they were all excellent actually, in their own way.
I will say that it was definitely tougher back then though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say that.
Yeah.
And
I'd agree.
And why do you think so, G? What stood out for you?
For me, I believe it's the mental capacity to push through the adversity that all of the young people back then would have had, that had to go through out of necessity for, like in Lenny's case, he was helping his family survive. Like it was really about life and not surviving, life and death. It was really like that. So it was so much tougher to live, literally to live back then, which I perceive is definitely tougher than how we are now. We've definitely moved into a much more comfortable lifestyle, even though it has its own ups and downs. it's not. Back then, a lot harder.
And for Harry and Jeff, obviously in your episode, in the milk run, what were perhaps the toughest challenges for you? And maybe I assume you probably watched some of the other episodes. What things stood out for you in the other episodes that would have been pretty tough?
Yeah, so our episode, like, sometimes when my parents give me chores to do, like just doing the dishes, I get a bit annoyed, but that's like nothing, like a week's worth of chores is about what Conway did in a day. And so, yeah, that was really challenging to like face that fact almost for me.
Yeah, I
Harry,
found.
what about for you?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as what Jeffrin said. Like you get chores to do around the house, like clean your room and all of that. And he would have done that maybe like at the start of his run, and then he would have went out for the entire day, and then he would have came back. He would have been tired. He would have had his dinner, and then he would have went to bed and did it all again, day by day. So I think that's like nothing compared to what we do now. But yeah, now though we still face challenges like that though.
And in some of the other Are You Tougher episodes, were there any things that stood out for you and you thought that would have been tough to do for the kids that were involved in some of the other episodes?
Yeah, in the cooking episode, eating like the tongue and stuff. It's just not nice.
And one of the other, because you guys are down in sort of Gippsland area, Victoria, and one of the other episodes was based down there, and it was about a young boy that rode his horse to Sydney to view the opening of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. How easy do you reckon that would have been?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard there was a book written about Lenny, and on the book it said that all he took was a sandwich and an apple. And so I was when I read that, I like had a mini heart attack, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a long way to go to last year with a sandwich and an apple, isn't it, to Sydney?
Yeah.
Our next questions come through from Great Ryrie Primary School, which is here in Victoria. And this probably is for Vanna and Jeff and Harry. It's how were the children selected for the series? So Vanna, you might want to give your perspective, and then in terms of how Jeff and Harry came on board.
We had quite an extensive casting process, but basically what we did was we looked for children who had a connection with each story, and usually it would be a cultural connection, or they would live in the location, or they would do a similar task in a modern context to what the historical child had done back in the past. So we tended to find people or young people who had a real sort of passion in the area that we were filming in, or what the story was in, and then we would see how they would go if they were back 100 years or 50 years or whatever, and how different it was. And so that's generally how we selected our young people for each episode. But I have to say, Harry and Jeffrin did honestly the best casting application. They went and sent extra photographs, and they showed themselves with their little pony on their farm, and it was great. So they were a no-brainer. We had to have them on the show. They were fabulous.
So it sounds like you put some time and effort in, guys, into if you like, auditioning or putting in your pitch. So what did you do? Flesh it out a bit for us.
So our drama teacher, she told us about that they were casting for a new show called Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors? And so Harry emailed the casting director, and he emailed us back and told us to bring a friend. So and then we had to go to an interview, and before that interview, Harry's got a pony on his farm. His name's Donkey, and we took some photos with him. We shoveled some poo, and it was fun.
And I think in the episode, Harry, you mentioned that you have perhaps in your family history, was it bakers that you had that perhaps, was it grandparents somehow delivered bread or something similar to what Conway was doing? Is that right, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, my great-grandpop used to do bread and bake bread and all that back in the olden days.
And would have he delivered that around town?
Yeah, he did that as well. He would have delivered it around Queensland, I think.
Yeah. And with the audition, once you knew that you had the part, did you know then, when did you find out it was going to be Conway's story that you were going to be reenacting or trying to do what he did?
We didn't find out until quite a bit later, but we thought we were doing the Lenny episode, but when we found out, we were still excited because it's still really cool to be able to get the opportunity.
And did you have to do much research or find out about, what his life was or what he did?
Oh yeah, just before the interviews and stuff, because we thought we were doing Lenny the Legend, and they told us that, so we did the interview based on Lenny the Legend, and later on they told us that we're doing Conway Ty, and so we're like, oh, but we researched them more, and we researched some facts, his horse's name and his age, 15, and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
Okay, so there's a fair bit of homework involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
And Vanna, for you, why did you pick the Conway Ties story as one of the episodes? What stood out for you in that one?
Well, I'd just like to say that Conway's still alive. He's, I think he's 90 now, and he's an amazing man. He's really great, really funny, and he remembers everything about what he did when he was a kid. And I think the story was just a really interesting story, a kind of a daily story really about how young people worked in the past, like what their lives were like around that age of sort of, 13, 14, 15, and how he worked 365 days a year. So he never had a day off, and he didn't have a day off for years and years and years. In fact, through most of his life, he was just working. And it was a family-run business, so he worked with his brother and his dad, first his dad and then his brother, and they took it over, and they were there for, I think, about 60 years, over 60 years. They served their local community, so everybody knew them. And it was just, now when we jump in the car and we go to the supermarket and we sort of buy stuff, we're quite disconnected from where our food comes from. And Conway was very much about food in the local community. And in some ways, we've kind of come full circle, and that's sort of what we do more now, really, because they would have a relationship with a particular dairy that would deliver the milk once a week, and they would process the milk. So it was all very local, like it was kind of really very much like that. So we just thought it was a good story about, about kids' lives in the past, but also about food and how we get food now and that sort of thing as well. So I will definitely send the link to this this webinar to Conway's family when we've finished. They'd love to see it.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of the stories, like Conway's story, obviously he was working for his family business, and it was his family's dairy that had been delivering milk for decades and decades. So when we were talking about perhaps the kids doing these various tasks, in some cases they were doing a job for their family, and it was an important job, because if it didn't get done, if Conway didn't get up at 2 a.m. and get on the horse and deliver the milk, then obviously his family didn't perhaps make money from that day, from the milk run.
Absolutely. And in fact, the Lincoln Park Dairy was established by Conway's, I could get this wrong, I hope not, but Conway's mother, I think, or grandmother, because she was a widower, around, I think it was, the early part of the 19th century, and she had lots of children. There were quite a lot. It was a big family. And so the dairy was a way for the whole family to be supported and to make money. And this was in the years before any form of social security or anything like that. So, really it was essential, as G was saying before, it was essential that the kids worked and that everyone pulled together in the family, and they all had their own jobs to run the whole family business. And it became very successful, which is why it was in existence for so long. And it supported the entire family. So it supported all the siblings, and in fact generations, because then Conway's brother, his family also. So it was actually a very, it was a tight-knit family business that went on.
Yeah. Our next question is for you, G, and it's why is it important for all Australian kids, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, to see Aboriginal histories explored on screen? Why do you think that is important?
understanding is basically what it comes down to. You know, we live in a society that is quite disconnected to the First Nations people here in this country. The Native Australians, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians, the Indigenous Australians, like whatever name you're used to hearing or using, you know, there is a huge disconnection. So it's really important for young people to see our true history and the connections of that, so that we don't follow in the same footsteps of our predecessors.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I imagine
it's a great way, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the beauties of the series, and Vanna, you might want to comment too, obviously it's an incredibly diverse range of kids, and in terms of the ancestors that we're looking at, from whether it's Indigenous to non-Indigenous to different cultural ethnic groups. So it's an incredibly diverse series of stories that we don't perhaps always see on our screens.
Yeah, that's really one of the central sort of tenets of the show, actually, is to explore stories that we don't often see. So if you open up a history book, we tend to keep away from those stories. We look for the ones that often come from communities or individuals that we don't see perhaps as often. And I think there are incredible First Nations kids' stories all around the country. And I think it's great to see kids from all different backgrounds and see what they did in the past. So there's no shortage of amazing stories and amazing children, actually. So that's what we do. We look there. We look in community history. We contact, in the case of First Nations communities, we contact elders, and we just talk as widely as possible and throw it open as widely as possible to see what stories we can find. And there's always incredible ones. So, yeah, there's a lot we can still learn about our history. There's a lot we really don't know.
And I think the ACTF, we've received wonderful feedback from teachers and schools around the country. And I think because of the diversity of the series, kids can see their stories reflected in the series. Really diverse range of kids in ways that perhaps previously we haven't seen. And I suspect that's part of the reason why it's so popular and been so well received, as well as the great talent and the wonderful role that G's played, is that there's lots of stories that kids can go, that's sort of my family reflected there, or my background or my past.
Yeah, that's very important to us. That's one of the key reasons for the show, actually. Yeah.
This one's for Jeff and Harry, and this has come from Peregian Springs State School again in Queensland. And it was, what was your worst and favourite challenge in the milk run? So in terms of what did you enjoy most, and maybe what didn't you enjoy most, what were the things that stood out for both of you in the milk run episode?
For me, probably my favourite part was doing the pouring the milk into the bottles, because that was it was a basic task, but I found it like almost like calming, just like the same process of putting milk into glass bottles. It was calm and nice.
I really liked delivering all the milk, and my worst task was probably filling up the bottles. I kept dropping all the milk on the ground. Just well, I wasn't too good at it.
What about cleaning up Molly's stable area? Was that one of the favourite tasks or not?
Oh, yeah, that was not fun.
So did you actually have to clean it up, or did they just film for a couple of minutes, or did you actually have to do it?
Oh no, we actually had to clean it up.
Yeah, we cleaned some of the stable, taking the poo and putting it into a bucket, and I remember some of it getting on my hand, and a little bit disgusted about that.
And one of the questions that came through was about Molly, and saying how easy was it to work with Molly? Was she a good cast member?
Oh, she was amazing. I love Molly. She was really chill. She was calm and collected. Yeah, amazing to work with.
I'm sure she says the same about you too. This one's probably for Vanna and G. It's about probably the whole series. This has come from Great Ryrie Primary School, again here in Melbourne. was it tough to record the episodes? So I imagine they were recorded in different states around the country. I'm sure there were challenges recording them because some were out in remote areas, and I think there were fires happening around the country at the time, and a global pandemic was coming. You mightn't have realised at the time. So what were some of the challenges, or how tough was it to record the whole series? Maybe Vanna to start with, and then G.
Well, yes, that's exactly. It was tough in the sense that making the show was. I mean, it was the first time we'd made it, and we travelled a lot for each episode. You know, we moved around quite a bit around the country. But yes, when we were filming in Sydney, the fires were on, and there was smoke everywhere, and we had to stop filming for one day because the air quality was so poor. And you know, it was an interest. Well, we're still in a very interesting time now, but it was also a lot of fun, and we did have fantastic cast, and we also had fantastic people, which we call our history helpers, who were sort of the experts or the adults that would help out in each episode. They were amazing. So you know, it was a real mix. But G, you give us, you know, hand over to you now.
It was hard. I mean, yes, fun and hard. When we were filming, oh my gosh, what's that place called? Adelaide Hills.
Andorf?
No. But
Oh,
yeah. The you know, what's really important about filming everybody is continuity. So, you know, and that helps with everything that happens after you film, like in the editing room. So on these particular days that we were filming away from buildings and stuff, when it was windy, my hair kept flying across my face. And that, you can't stop the wind. So there was a lot of 1 second, my hair was like sitting here. I moved my hair, and then the hair would sit over here, and they'd move. So you know, like all the making sure the continuity was spot on was hectic. Sand blowing in your eyes, you know, sun in your eyes. Sometimes the heat. You know, there's so many things that can affect so many other things as well. So there you know, you learn how to be quite flexible. Quite quickly, which you know, I'm totally a big fan of that. I love like, you know, spontaneity and stuff. And all the young people were really good at adapting. I mean, you know, they partly didn't have a choice but to adapt as well in some particular stances, which I thought was cool. I was like, oh, yep, this is like a task on top of the task, and I'm experiencing it too. So that's, you know, like we got a connection going on here. Yeah, it was tricky some day. Like some days I would have filming in the morning, and then I wouldn't have any filming until the afternoon. So, you know, there's in some of the episodes I was just kind of waiting. There was a waiting game, which isn't bad. Well, not for me anyway. Some people might find that quite arduous, but you know, I'd have a yarn with Molly, and you know, we'd look out and just I'd be like, oh yeah, what do you think of that tree? And you know, and Molly's like, no. It's okay. So, you know, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of cast and crew, which were really great. So, yeah, it was hard, and but yeah, but fun, you know. Yeah.
And G, what did you enjoy most about the whole experience? Because it comes through that, I mean, I think you're an amazing host, and there's enormous warmth that you brought and an energy you brought. So what did you enjoy most about the whole series and your role as a host?
There's many things that I enjoyed about it. You know, hanging out with young people is definitely something that I really enjoy, because I'm, you know, still learning and learning how to navigate the world that we're constantly shifting into, and the young people know more about the newest world than I do, even though I've been here longer, if that even makes sense. So I'm also learning as well, learning all the stories. It was really exciting. because what it made me do as a First Nations person was that I'd look at the history before the history. So I'd go, yes, Wilhelmina, for example, and the Wiley Barks, like that actually was a sacred site for Aboriginal people pre-colonisation. So I found myself journeying as well, like parallelly, like I was doing a parallel journey of my own while this other history was happening on top of the origins of this country. So I found that quite exciting, because I was like, oh, actually, the mob here, the Bidjigal, the Gadigal mob here in this area, they actually use these for these reasons, and then it made me even more curious about the rest of the country, because I mean, geez, there's at least 300 Aboriginal clans, in this country alone. And that blows my mind all the time, and I get really excited about how many stories are really out there for First Nation stories and peoples, and yeah, so that's what I found exciting about it. Yeah, it was enjoyable on so many different levels. Yeah.
And probably for Jeff and Harry, how important was it to have G with you as host, without embarrassing her, I imagine?
You want me to clock off?
Because she seemed, as I say, to be sort of the life and soul of the series. So how important was G for you guys?
Yeah, she was very fun to be around and calming,
she was I don't know, she had a vibe that was just fun to be around, I guess.
Yeah. Very engaging towards us and the crew and all that around us.
And Vanna, you might want to add something to that as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, G is completely fabulous. I mean, I think she is the heart and soul of the series. And it's just, she's a total pleasure to work with. And she just absolutely, because when we originally came up with the concept, the role of the guide or the host was kind of an empty space. We didn't really have a kind of a vision for it. And so it is actually all 100% G. She created this wonderful role and character, and also engagement with the kids and with the history. She just brought so much to the show. I mean, and it's completely her. Like she created that herself. So total asset.
Oh my gosh. It was, I must say, it's definitely a group effort.
Oh yes.
Having Brad Gustafson and Joanne Beckwith Donahue, like the DOP and the director, like we were navigating the young people as well as the young people navigating us. So it was really a conversation that we're having all the time, and I really love working with young people. Like I travel around the country doing workshops and stuff with dance with a lot of young people, and I remember what it was like when I was a young person, and I always felt like I was forgotten, so or like overlooked or not heard, or like I always felt like that when I was younger. And the last thing that I want to do is silence our young people. So having a yarn and hanging out was just as much for me as it was for them. So I'm glad you fellas were real chill with hanging out with me and having big yarns and stuff, because I had a great time young with you fellas too, and I really wish we got that ice cream. But anyway, that's another story.
My next question is for everyone, for all of you. Was there something new the series taught you about Australia's or the country's history and people that you perhaps didn't realise before the series? So whether it was obviously the milk run episode, but across the board, were there things that surprised you, that taught you about our history and our people that you didn't know before? Maybe Harry and Jeff, we might start with you.
Yep. So for me, in Australia's history, all I've known about Australia's history is Captain Cook, he came over here, and now that I have been taught more about the Aboriginal people and all this stuff, it's fascinating, and hearing all these other stories that you barely ever hear about, and to bring them into the spotlight with this series is really, really cool.
Great, thank you.
I wouldn't have known anything. I didn't know anything about all these characters that have been in the series and all that, and it just gave me like a new light to what Australia was back then. Like, now we're all at school, we don't work until we're 16, 17, and they were working from 12 till like onwards, and it was just crazy to think about. It just really like shined a light. It's like, oh my goodness.
Absolutely. And Vanna, for you?
Oh, look, quite a lot of things, actually. I think probably, well, I mean, as G said, we have at least 300 First Nations communities in Australia and the Torres Strait Islands. And I think sort of understanding the huge diversity and amazing cultural sort of background of those communities is fascinating and of such richness. We're so lucky, actually. And the other thing that I found really interesting was that actually in the 19th century, I think Australia has actually got a very strong multicultural history. And I think prior to 1901, which was our federation, we had quite a rich and diverse sort of communities of people here. And in fact, we probably, it's not just been since the 1970s that we've had a multicultural society in Australia. Actually, when you look back into the 19th century, so many fantastic communities were here. There were so many people doing things, so many contributions from people from all around the world, and not just from, people from all backgrounds. And I think it's really important to remember that actually we have a really strong multicultural history, and all of it is built on a foundation of First Nations country, because this is where we all are. So to sort of know more about that and where we are. So when we were filming, it was really important that we always said, look, this is the country that we're on, because that's where we were. So I think things like that, like starting to sort of explore that more, and I found that really fascinating. And there's more of it. There's more out there that we'd like to look at as well.
And G, for you, what things stood out that surprised you, or?
It was interesting because some of the hard work that the young people did, like that was so long ago in the perspective of the show. My parents were working that hard, like my parents that aren't that old, if that makes sense. So the similarities of the hardships that were perceived to happen back then still happens now was interesting for me. Also, Harndorf, for example, this little German community that they needed each other, so they made one. Like that I found that quite exciting, because also in a place called Griffith in regional New South Wales, there's a lot of Greek people there and Italians that made their own community there as well. So like finding these little pockets of those specific communities around the place always fascinates me. But yeah, kind of running parallel really. I'm like, oh, actually that's not that far away. So when you think of Australia, like it's actually quite young as a country in the world, and kind of coming and understanding what that is and where everybody's at. I feel, like the understanding broadens more. I hope that's not too vague. But to think of Australia as a young country as opposed to an old country will also help understand the past and the present, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Another one from Loxton Lutheran School in South Australia was, what feedback have you received about the series?
So the feedback that we've gotten from like our friends and family that have watched it, it's been really good. Like everyone's enjoyed it, and like half the school that we're in right now has watched it, and they've all said good things about it. So yeah, it's really cool.
Like my friends and family, my cousins and all that have called me and said, "Oh, great job, Harry." Very welcoming and warming. It's very, very nice.
Vanna, for you, what sort of reaction have you had?
Oh, it's very positive. I mean, it's we've had a lot of positive response. So the show's done well. I mean, the most important thing actually to me personally is when I hear that children really like it. So that I usually get that feedback through someone's parents, and they'll say, oh, my child likes this or they like that. And that for me is absolutely the best sort of review of all. But in terms of sort of in the adult world, I suppose we've had a good response in the media, and we've been nominated for an actor award. So we're going and doing, that's in a month's time. We've been nominated for some ATOM Awards, which is the Australian Teachers of Media. So from that level, it's been well received as well. But like I said, it's the responses of children that are the best reviews ever. So, yeah.
And I know, G, when I was speaking to you a little bit earlier, you mentioned that you were having kids come up to you in the street.
Yeah.
Who recognised you. So
yeah, I've had some photos. Yeah, no, it's been really positive for me as well. All across the board, adults and young people, friends and colleagues and mentors. And some young people have bailed me up in the street asking for photos and stuff, which I'm totally happy for, by the way. You just got to make sure you got time for a photo shoot, and we're all sweet. And yeah, no, it's everybody's been really excited about it, really engaging, and actually asking me about a second series. So, well, what's really funny is when they're like, "So your show," and I'm like, "Whoa! Yeah, I'm a part of the show." Like all of that has been really, really exciting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to. Well, seeing all the young people kind of bail me up, I like that. That's cool.
Okay, we're almost out of time. We're going to squeeze one more quick one, and this is for you, Vanna. It's from Loxton Lutheran School again. Who wrote the theme music? We love it.
Oh, yes. The theme music is great. It was written by Joff Bush, who is the composer of the theme music of Bluey. So it couldn't possibly... he is... really fabulous. So, we love it too. Really love it. He's great.
Thank you to everyone that submitted questions, for Jean, for Vanna, for Jeffrin and for Harry. And thank you to our very special guests. It's been wonderful to hear about the series. I think it is such a groundbreaking series. It's already incredibly well loved and will continue to be so. So I want to thank Vanna, I want to thank G, I want to thank Jeffrin and Harry for joining us today. And thank you to all the schools around the country that joined us. And just a reminder, the Are You Tougher Than Your Ancestors teaching toolkit will be out in the next few weeks. So check out the ACTF website. Teachers there if you'd like to have a look at that.